All right. Well, how's it hanging? It is May 7th, 2023. And yeah, this is my movie review for Evil Dead. It's been a few weeks, probably almost a month since I did a movie review. And I think the last movie I did a review on was that Adam Driver movie 65 million years ago or something like that. I guess it was called 65. I don't know. 65 million, 65, I don't know. But The Evil Dead Rise, which was a horror movie, came out a few weeks ago, and pretty popular by audience standards. I don't know, by critical review standards, from like well-known critics or whatever. Like, I don't think its Rotten Tomato score was super high. I didn't actually look, but I thought it was a good movie. I didn't actually see the original Evil Deads by Bruce Campbell, with starring Bruce Campbell. The original Sam Raimi things released like in 1981 or something, years and years ago. But I've been meaning to at some point watch them. They were always in my head, and I guess I'll catch up with them at some point and just see how they were in terms of 80s graphics and whatnot. I think from what I read, the first Evil Dead back in 81 was it was a pure horror movie, and then subsequent Evil Deads became action comedy slapstick movies with Bruce Campbell starring one of the lead roles in the movies as Ash. And I guess if you're like a super Evil Dead fan, you probably know the details of the Evil Dead franchise. You know about the Necronomicon. One of my favorite bands, the Black Dahlia Murder, actually made the Evil Dead backdrop kind of the main theme of a lot of their music. Specifically, their 2013 album came out 10 years ago. Oh, wow. And I think it came out the same year the soft reboot of the Evil Dead came out again, called Evil Dead. And that was called, it's a great album. I listen to it constantly. It's just not coming to my head right now, but it's very death themed as all of their other albums were. But they had like a few things about the Necronomicon songs, paying tribute to the Evil Dead. So my familiarity with Bruce Campbell comes from the 90s, where I watched him playing character. Was he the King of Thieves? Yes, I think he was the King of Thieves. I forgot his name in Xena the Warrior Princess / Hercules, but he was the King of Thieves, and he was a quirky character, and I believe if I had watched The Evil Dead, I'd be able to pull a lot of references that, he had, I would have been able to cross-correlate a number of references from that with his character in Xena, but I didn't. And now I'm going to go back and watch The Evil Dead. So let me get to The Evil Dead Rise, this movie. Now, it was a gory movie, but it was paying homage, I think, to the gore and horror of the 80s, which was truly like the Wes Craven kind of horror. Lee Cronin was the director. His son recently directed a horror movie that I thought was interesting, but I don't think it got a lot of praise. But it was starring guy Alexander Skarsgård, who's in his late 40s, but he still looks like pretty young and extremely vital. These days, people in their 40s and 50s are looking extremely vital. I actually watched with my mom recently Lionel Richie playing at King Charles' coronation, and he was looking like very 73 years old, same age as, almost about the same age as Charles. Charles is 74, nearly a quarter of a century old. Lionel Richie freaking jumping around on stage, moving around. He's got the same kind of like rock star energy still that what's his name from Aerosmith still has, that Steve Perry or whatever, like Steve Perry. I mixed up some people. But yeah, still like amazing energy on stage. He's like, looks great. I think Charles asked him apparently, why is your you're the same age as me, and I know I'm getting off topic here. That's whatever, fine. This is my show. No, I'm kidding, whatever. You can watch it if you like. I'll get back to The Evil Dead in a bit. But the point being, the old things are still good, right? Like So back to the Evil Dead. So I'm gonna analyze this movie in isolation of the other Evil Dead movies, because again, I'm not gonna compare them. But Sam Raimi was still involved. That's great. Joxer, as I will forever call him, from Xena also, and Bruce Campbell was involved. Though I don't think Ash did not make an appearance, as far as I understand. I didn't see any cameos or anything like that. It was all new characters. But the chainsaw was still in the movie. The chainsaw, I believe, being an iconic part of the Evil Dead movies. So, it was campy-ish. It was kind of camp. There were some horror and jump scares, and I feel that there was true horror elements in the movie, but there was just as much campiness in the movie as well. Some of that was accentuated by the over-the-top gore, but I don't think the gore was over the top. It was they had the vomit gore from when the main character got possessed, and then they had they had bloody gore and a little bit of gristle kind of gore from a wood chipper towards the end of the movie. By the way, there's spoilers here, okay? So just if you haven't seen the movie, don't watch this if you don't want to be spoiled. If you don't want the movie to be spoiled for you, but watch it anyway because it would help my channel. And I'd appreciate any feedback, and I'd appreciate details about what you think about what I'm saying. So so basically, I mean, the plot isn't super crazy. They're in a lake. They start off. I mean, eventually the main characters affect the side characters. The side characters appear in the beginning of the movie. One of them scalps one of the other characters, and I guess cuts the head off of some other character. Whatever. Just standard horror stuff, beheadings, and again, callbacks to the 80s. Now, I don't know how many of those there will be, but I hope that they do that kind of thing. Making homages to that kind of, because there was CGI, of course, in this movie. There's CGI in every movie these days, and it has been for years and years and decades at this point. But in the 80s, there was no or barely any CGI, and they made a lot of the effects by hand. There were callbacks to the Freddy movies. In fact, there was a mention of the Freddy movies in the beginning, and the Freddy movies had tons of I think amazing effects. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies were truly scary, especially as a kid growing up. They became sillier as the series went on, but the special effects, again, Lee Cronin was involved in that. I mean, Wes Craven was, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street creator. I'm sure him and Lee Cronin had lots of ties, and if you're horror fans, you super horror fans, you probably know that. But those effects, the Freddy snake effect, or the bird on fire effect in the first movie, the hanging rope effect, the massive Freddy effect, all these Freddy pizza turning a guy into a pizza effect, the cockroach turning a girl into a cockroach effect. There's so many, I don't know, effort was put into horror movies in the 80s. I'll put it that way, over the top, and they were legit scary. Leprechaun for a long time was legit scary, until it became stuff like Leprechaun in the Hood and went off the rails. Troll was legit scary too, I think, honestly, the first one, and then it became silly, and everyone knows the Troll 2 meme, I think, where she's eating her, then she's gonna eat me, oh my god. Anyway, so so continuing on with Evil Dead, so there's so much stuff I want to explore. For example, the book was called Naturo Demonado, I guess, which was another name for the Necronomicon, or one of the volumes of the Necronomicon, which was a book that was the Book of the Dead, created for this series, I believe. I don't know if there was an actual Necronomicon. I think I tried to look it up at one time, and I didn't see any real Necronomicon. So that's one thing that's cool about this movie. I mean, the drawings in the book were really interesting too. I wish there was more backstory, but I guess you would have to have watched the other Evil Dead movies to get the full backstory of what the book is. So you just have to, if you're just watching this movie, you have to just put some fan fiction in your head about where this book could have come from. But like at least they mentioned like the kind of like background and the book evocation was quite interesting. Like for example, like you have to bleed on the book to open it. It was a book made of pure flesh of people or whatnot, and all the pages were fleshes of people. Like the drawings were really well done, but I don't know if they harken back to drawings in the original book from the original series. Maybe not. Maybe they redrew some stuff, but yeah, like again, it was like the mom comes back to life. The mom does, mom dies. She comes back to life. She becomes a demon. She's possessed by a demon. Her sister is the protagonist. Her sister eventually, she's being belittled by the demon via the mother, possession of the mother, for being a groupie when she's actually a guitar tech and doing a lot of things on the road that are significant. Yeah, so anyway, the point is, the sister saves the day, most of the family dies. The little sister saves the little girl in the end and herself. But the brother and sister both get killed. The sister also becomes one of those demon things and eats glass and stuff like that. And the brother gets killed and then becomes a demon thing. And then they all merge together with the mother to form like some kind of multi-armed demon entity called the Marauder, which is what I got from the wiki. But I think, if I recall from my days of playing Diablo way back in the day, Diablo had enemies called Marauders. In fact, I think many games had like these multi-armed enemies called the Marauder. And even when I stopped seriously playing games, I remember seeing references to this Marauder thing in other fanfic. And then like when I look at other series, when I think about Doom, right, I think maybe some of the Doom characters were inspired by Evil Dead characters. And I don't know if they had the multi-armed demon in other Evil Dead franchises, but I feel like I've seen it before in other franchises, like in other call-outs to other Evil Dead installments, right? So yeah, I think I might do an Evil Dead marathon at some point, really get into the series. And I wasn't in the mood for a horror movie today, but I was like, you know what, might as well. I was more like, the thing is, it was like at the time when I decided to go to the movie and do my weekly movie thing. But I would say that even there, it was entertaining enough to make me feel like I want to watch more of this series. I want to see Bruce Campbell though. Like, he's a funny guy, and I haven't seen him for years, and literally I haven't seen him since the 90s or probably early 2000s when Xena ended. And like, he was in his 40s then at that point, so I guess he's in his 60s now. Maybe he was in his 30s or 40s, so he's in his probably 60s now. But I'm sure, like most people in Hollywood who want to stay forever young and they're acting and they're running around, people in their 60s and 70s, like I mentioned, Lionel Richie these days, probably still running around and doing crazy stuff, as healthy as ever, Speaking of which, speaking of older folks, I did just watch part of the finales of the Starship of Picard, which had the entire crew, the original Enterprise crew, back on the Enterprise D. I don't know, I haven't been following the Picard series. It has the Borg back, but I have to catch up for that. I wasn't too happy about like some of the things I had heard about how they had kind of ruined, and in a modern way, a lot of things about Star Trek by deconstructing Picard a ton. But I mean, I don't know. Like in this latest series, he looked really healthy. He's 82. You know, it felt like watching the old Star Trek again a bit. So I'm gonna have to see how the finale goes. I'm hoping none of the characters die, but Data is back, and I thought Data had died, and apparently he has come back, and I am assuming he'd come back from an alternative timeline. I do recall somewhere that they had mentioned an alternative timeline on Earth, because Data had died in Star Trek Nemesis, and then his ghost had visited again. I know this, I'm watching clips, and I'm not trying to ruin Picard, I guess, but spoiler alert for that too. He'd come back, and yeah, so well, there you have it, and there you go. I guess I'm gonna have to buy Paramount Plus and binge watch Picard, because I did feel the rush of emotion back to my days of watching Star Trek Next Generation by watching the finale of Picard, and I will say that made me feel like, yeah, like, you know, that there is a world where I can enjoy things as I once used to, and perhaps in 20 years it may be the same, though I don't know if Patrick Stewart has another 20 years. Maybe he'll make another Picard, and maybe life extension stuff will come around in the next few years, and Jean-Luc Picard will be young again and doing things all the way into his late 200s. And I don't know, but yeah, now, okay, so I think I've probably got to the end of my Evil Dead analysis. Let me look for some weaknesses in there, because again, I've just mentioned positive things. So what could I say were some weaknesses? The storytelling elements were a little bare. I mean, that's not so surprising, because I'm assuming that's not the main point of this. Like, there was a lot of potential, I think, to expand into something deeper, right? Like, that's one thing I do like about horror movies that was missing from this one, was that, again, the history of the Naturo de Monto, or Demonoto, whatever, the Necronomicon, these weren't really explored a ton, possibly because of the sequel nature of this, and it might have been expounded upon later, but they could still extend the lore. It was a 2-hour movie already, so I'm assuming the production budget had already been expended. It looked like it did pretty well in the box office. I don't know how much it took to make the movie, but I mean, if you're gonna make a 2-hour horror movie, you might as well make a 3-hour horror movie. I don't know. I mean, especially if it's an established series, I guess. Like, was it 2 hours? No, it was not even 2 hours. I think it was 103 minutes. Okay, well, that's, you know, that's in line with an hour and 40 minutes. That's in line with movies, but still, again, you know, they look like there's stuff that would have been super interesting to expand on, and I think the audience would have eaten it up. But I guess the gore factor, I would say also the acting of the mom character actually was really good. The evil mom character, Elle. Beth was the name of the character, the heroine character. She was okay, you know, like standard fare for like a hero type character, you know, unflappable. There were some, okay, and let's talk about uniquenesses in the gore. There were some unique gore scenes which were like super cringe, like the cheese grater scene. That was fucking gross. Like, that was gross, like, because there's things that are gross that you've seen, everyone's seen already, like intestines ripping out and stuff and opening, but the cheese grating thing like really shook me. Like, so basically one of the characters attacks another character by grating her leg with a cheese grater. That was fucking gross and cringe, and I was watching that, I was like, oh, and I don't know why that had much more of an impact on me than intestine ripping stuff, but I guess that's just because and they didn't extend that, so that would have been much more interesting, but maybe people are grossed out because they're not used to that as much. Anyway, that's the end of that. Thanks for watching. 20 minutes worth of this review full of other extraneous things, but I'll catch you at the next one. See you around.